Howdy readers, I'm Jason, this is Chapter and Verse, and welcome to my weekly ramble with the yarn. As promised, I thought I would start with an update on my weight. So I'm up 2 pounds from 2 weeks ago, but it's strange because like 2 or 3 days before I logged that weight, I weighed and I was actually down like 1.5 pounds or 2 pounds from where I was 2 weeks ago. So I don't drink nearly as much water as I should, so the jury is still out as to whether or not that's actual weight gained. I guess we'll know more next weekend, but anyway, I just wanted to share that with you guys, including you in the struggles that I'm having and what I'm trying to accomplish with my health. It just feels, I don't know. It feels like you guys are on the bench, kind of cheering me on. I suppose, even if that's not necessarily the case, it's what it feels like. So that's the important thing. I also wanted to show you guys just the progress that I'm making on the blanket for our cat, Blue. So it's got many skeins in it now. They're not big skeins. They're rather expensive skeins. He's a spoiled cat. But, so before I get to what I've been reading and what I've been watching, I wanted to do a couple other things. So the first thing is I wanted to give a shout out to a brand new channel. Now she has been a commenter here on Booktube for quite some time. You guys will probably all, many of you will know her from the comments. But anyway, she has started a channel. And it is called Beating Around the Books, and her name is Sina. So I will leave a link to her channel down below. Do check it out. She's the booktuber with whom I've been doing the buddy read of Mrs. Dalloway. Her and Mark Nash, the three of us have been doing that buddy read together, and it's been wonderful. And the second thing I wanted to mention is that I'm also appearing in a video today on my wife's channel. Many of you know that I'm married to a booktuber, Kelly from Books I'm Not Reading. And she and I filmed a video this weekend that was, just kind of all about what it's like for each of us to be married to another booktuber and how Booktube kind of lives in our household, if that makes any sense. So I will link to her video below as well. I've got notes here. I've got a stack of books. So before getting into what I've been reading and what I've been watching, I wanted to share with you guys that I read a really cool article last night in The Guardian, where they asked a number of writers to choose what they thought were the most romantic scenes in literature. And I just thought it was great. I thought it was just a really great piece, even though some of the scenes that they shared spoiled things in the books. I can't remember the name of the Joseph Conrad novel. I think it was Victory, is maybe what it was. Sebastian Barry chose it. Anyway, there's a spoiler in the description, or in his relation of the scene in that one. But I mean, God, if I ever read Victory by Conrad, it'll be, like 30 years from now or something. I'm sure I'll have forgotten it. I've actually already forgotten it. But when I saw the headline and just started kind of digging into the piece a little bit, it made me wonder, like, what is the most romantic scene that I've ever read in literature? And the answer to that question popped into my head immediately. I didn't have to think about it. So I just thought I would share that with you. And the scene is from Wallace Stegner's Angle of Repose. And so what I'm going to do, so it's just, I don't know, it's a little bit more than a page. So I'll just, it's right at the very beginning of a chapter. So what I'll do is I will read the kind of, the lead into the scene itself, which is a paragraph, and then the scene itself. And just so you guys can kind of get a sense of the background to the scene, the background of each of these characters before we actually get to the scene. And then if you would, I would love for each of you to share with me in the comments, what do you think is the most romantic scene in all of literature? So, Angle of Repose, Wallace Stegner. It's the beginning of chapter 5. She was quickly reassured that he was not impossible, at least for any society short of Augusta's. He was most admiring of her talent and respectful of her friends. He was as big and restful as she had found him in the library in Brooklyn Heights. He had a way of speaking lightly of things, without persuading her that he felt them lightly. He was not talkative, but once wound up, he charmed them all with his stories of life in California. Her parents sat up late to hear him, though when her New York friends visited, they went early to bed. He could play chess, that promised cozy evenings. Her father said he had never seen a man pick a basket of apples faster. And when he took hold of the oars of a rowboat, the rowboat nearly jumped out of the water. But she puzzled where to take him on some excursion. Long Pond and Black Pond, liked by New York visitors, were not enough for a man who had seen the Yosemite and ridden the length of the San Joaquin Valley through square miles of wildflowers. So she and Bessie and John took him to Big Pond, 8 miles back in the woods, a wild romantic place where a waterfall poured into a marble pool and then fell through diminishing pools to the lake. It was incorrigibly Hudson River School, brown light, ragged elms, romantic water. There they sat on the grass, confronting nature. When they had eaten, they did what poets and philosophers did outdoors in the early years of the picturesque. Strolled, picked early autumn leaves or late gentians. Susan sketched a little while he stood admiring by. They did not spoon, though Bessie strategically led her husband away so the two could be alone. Having no acceptable way of expressing their feelings directly, they probably vented them on nature. I can see a lot of tableau while she is struck speechless by a view or a flaming swamp maple, and he stands there with his hat in his hand before the purity of her sensibility. Late in the afternoon, they were back at their picnic spot at the top of the fall. She had always responded strongly to storms, rain in the face, wild winds, wild waters, exciting crossings of the Hudson through floating ice. On this day, she lay down and hung her face over the cliff to see down the waterfall. At about the same time, and for similar reasons, John Muir was hanging over the brink of Yosemite Falls, dizzying himself with the thunder of hundreds of tons of foam and green glass going by him. Muir had a good deal farther to look down, and the rush of water was far wilder past his ear. But Susan Burling had something her fellow romantic did not. She had Oliver Ward hanging onto her ankles to make sure she didn't spill over. Anxious? Not on your life. In these days, when a girl goes to bed with anybody who will pat her in a friendly way on the rump, few will be able to imagine how Oliver Ward felt holding those little ankles. He would not have let go if fire had swept the hilltop, if warrior ants had swarmed over him from head to foot, if Indians had sneaked from the bushes and hacked him loose from his hands. As for Susan Burling, upside down and with her world whirling, that strong grip on her ankles was more than physical contact made sweet by the fact that it came between the bars of an iron cage of propriety, touch asserting itself against 1,000 conventions. It was the very hand of the protective male. When she came up out of her dizzying tete-a-tete with the waterfall, she was in love. And that's my most romantic scene. So let me know in the comments below what your favorite romantic scene is from literature. So as to what I've been reading, I finished Mrs. Dalloway, and I have to say that I was slightly disappointed by the party scene there in the end for a couple of reasons. So there's a character who, up to that point in the novel, has only kind of existed in the memories of Clarissa Dalloway. And but that memory, right, is just so stunning, and this character, she makes an appearance at the end, and kind of unannounced, and and you're left feeling as soon as she kind of walks onto the stage, as it were, you're left feeling that there's going to be something extraordinary that happens between her and Clarissa, and. And I'm not going to say that nothing happens between them, but, the end of the novel just felt, it felt really subdued to me in many ways, very kind of staid, whereas much of the rest of the book felt kind of wild, and, so it's a world that feels, kind of buttoned up, but there's something about Woolf's sensibility and how she approaches the minds and the hearts of her characters that made the book feel really alive and electric and kind of restless, and that kind of goes away at the end in the final act. In the end it was 4.5, but I rounded up rather than down because what it does well, it does better than you can really imagine it being done by anyone else. So anyhow, yeah, I mean it wasn't a true clean home run for me in the end, and it makes me wonder what Virginia Woolf novel will be, because I suspect one of them will be. I've now read To the Lighthouse and Mrs. Dalloway, and I really love both of them. But I also had problems with both of them, so maybe it'll be The Waves, maybe it'll be Orlando, or The Years. The Years is the one that I'm most excited to read, I think. But anyway, so that was Mrs. Dalloway. And then I started reading, after that, also for my book club. I'm about 60 pages in. I'm reading Samantha Harvey's The Western Wind. And this is quite good. So I'm really curious to know, how the structure is going to play with what the story actually is. But she's a really fine writer, really beautiful sentences. Strangely, this has a blurb on the cover from the Telegraph, and then they said this generation's Virginia Woolf, which I thought was quite weird to pick this up right after reading Virginia Woolf. I'm not seeing that myself. I'm not sure where that comparison comes from, but anyhow, it's a good book. It is reminding me a lot of Harvest by Jim Crace, and going much further back of Havoc in Its Third Year by Ronan Bennett, which is a pretty obscure novel, but it's a tremendously good novel. And this is probably reminding me most of that rather than Harvest. But anyway, The Western Wind. As to what I've been watching, I have rewatched Groundhog Day by Harold Ramis. I watched with my Wednesday night film club Ma Rainey's Black Bottom, directed by George C. Wolfe. Rewatched Spy, directed by Paul Feig, I'm not sure how you pronounce his name. I rewatched The Silence of the Lambs, directed by Jonathan Demme, which the more I see it, the more I love it. It's a film I saw in the theater when I was 16 years old. And, I loved it then, but I've seen it 5 or 6 more times since then, right, over the last... I guess that'd be 30 years. That's a little bit weird. And it's just exceptional. God, it's really close to being a perfect film, and it may even be a perfect film. I finished the Small Axe anthology of films by Steve McQueen on Amazon Prime. I watched the last 2 films in that series, Alex Wheatle and Education. I watched for the first time Woody Allen's September, which was it's cool to finally see. So Woody Allen he's always been obsessed with Ingmar Bergman. And as you guys know, I love Bergman. And Bergman made a series of films called chamber dramas. And Woody Allen, in the late 70s to maybe the mid-80s, made a series of chamber dramas himself, maybe just 2 or 3 of them. But kind of modeled on what Bergman had been doing in films like Cries and Whispers and Autumn Sonata. And I had never seen any of these films, and September was the first of them that I've seen, and it was quite good. Had one very annoying character in it, but that's okay. And then I saw The Dig, also for the Wednesday Night Film Club, and it's on Netflix. It's a Netflix original. If you have Netflix and you haven't watched The Dig yet, you must. It is just astoundingly good. It has in it one of Ralph Fiennes' best performances. It is about the excavation of the Sutton Hoo archaeological site in England, and it is just a tremendously good movie. Imagine like a James Ivory, like a Merchant Ivory film, kind of filtered through the sensibility and the aesthetic of Terrence Malick, and that's kind of what you have in that movie. Watched a crazy documentary called Mucho Mucho Amor, The Legend of Walter Mercado. I watched that with my friend Ben, and the conversation that he and I had on Zoom about it was much better than the film itself. I rewatched The Goonies, and then this morning on Mubi. So Mubi is a streaming platform that's quite eclectic and quite cool. And they're celebrating their 14th birthday. And in celebration of that birthday, they decided to give everybody in the world 24 hours of free Mubi. And there are a bunch of films on Mubi that I would really like to see, but there were three that I wanted to make sure to watch today. I only got to two of them. But one was Hard to Be a God, directed by Alexei German. And then Nomad, in the Footsteps of Bruce Chatwin, directed by Werner Herzog. And the film I want to talk with you guys about today is Hard to Be a God. All right, so I have not read the source novel. Right? I can't remember the names of the two authors who wrote it, but they're the same authors who wrote Roadside Picnic, if I'm not mistaken, which was the source material for Andrei Tarkovsky's Stalker. And Hard to Be a God. So, in a nutshell, the plot is so these scientists, at some point in the future, these scientists are sent to a planet that has been found in the Goldilocks zone around some star somewhere. But they've been sent to a planet that has been found that is identical to Earth in its composition and its makeup, and also in its evolution. In the creatures on the planet, right? So it is populated by human beings. But the thing is that they are like 800 years behind where we are now. So, I mean, so it's weird. It's a science fiction film. They're on another planet, but it looks like a historical drama, right? Set in, I don't even know, right? The 12th century or something. In Europe is what it looks like. And it so convinces as a kind of document of a period in Earth's history that I could hardly believe my eyes, right? So it's 3 hours long. It's in black and white. It's in Russian. And, it is one of the most beautifully shot films I've ever seen. But what the director is shooting, okay, like what is unfolding in the world before our eyes is vile. I mean, it's just disgusting, right? You've never seen a film with more mud and shit and piss and snot and blood and guts, literal guts in it than are in this movie. And it's not just the look of the thing, it's the sound design of the thing as well. I mean, it's just completely immersive. And so one of these scientists, right, who's on the planet, he has come to be kind of looked at or accepted as a deity, as a god, right, in this community. And so he has a kind of place of privilege. Now, ostensibly what the scientists are there to do is to help try to kind of usher in the Renaissance, right? To kind of keep them on pace to become, on their planet what the Earth has become, right? So as far as like civilization goes and the Enlightenment and all this stuff, they're there to kind of put them on that path. But the problem is that the people of this world don't want to be on that path. This is a place where they, they're taking the few scholars that there are, right, at the university in this place. They're taking the few academics who actually exist, and they're killing them, brutally killing them, right? These people who are critics and thinkers, and there's one scene where, and we're not shown it, thank God, but there's one scene where they there's this massive well in the ground that's used as a latrine, and it's just full, it's like 10 feet deep of piss and shit, and they take this academic and they drown him in it, right, and then they string his body up to be pecked at by the birds, by the crows, and there's just there's a lot of really kind of shocking violence in the film, and And so when I finished it, it's a strange movie to watch on Valentine's Day morning, that's for sure. But yeah, after I made breakfast for Kelly, I made blueberry pancakes and bacon. I had to sit down and watch Hard to Be a God. And when it was over, I was so kind of shell shocked by it. I mean, it's a mesmerizing film, but it's just disgusting as well. It's just absolutely disgusting. But I wasn't sure how I felt about it because I couldn't really understand what the film was trying to say. And so this afternoon, I spent some time walking on the treadmill, and while I was walking on the treadmill, I was looking at reviews of the film and reading reviews of the film online. I listened to Robbie Collins' review on YouTube, and it helped me. It helped me understand the film better, and it actually helped me arrive at my own interpretation, I suppose, of the film, and so essentially, Hard to Be a God seems to me incredibly timely for right now. So this is a movie that was shot over a period of 7 years, 6 or 7 years, right at the beginning of this century, starting in 2000, and it came out in 2013, and I have no idea. I mean, how they filmed this thing, right? Like, I mean, the movie looks like the Andrei Tarkovsky who made Andrei Rublev, was spirited away to some, Middle Ages on some planet somewhere to make a documentary about barbarism. Is what it looks and feels like. But as far as what I feel like the movie is about, and why I feel like it's timely for today, right? So this seems to me to be, and I've got my notes here, a meditation on the struggle to civilize a society or to civilize a people, right? And this is not just through education and learning, but even through like just fucking manners, right, and modesty. There's so many instances in the film of people just walking around and just covering up one side of their nose and just blowing snot all over to the ground. And there's a moment in the film when the scientist, who again, right, I mean, is kind of thought to be a god by these people. There's a young woman that he seems to be in love with, and there's a moment where they're having a conversation, and she is really really sniffly, and there's this moment where he reaches around with a kind of handkerchief or a cloth or something, and he kind of holds it up to her nose and has her blow in it, and it's almost like he's instructing her in manners, right? And it just makes you think of how difficult and how over how long a period it would take for a society, for a people to civilize themselves, right? I mean, first they have to want to be, and I feel like it's a particularly timely film, given how. It's been going on for a while now, but especially over the last 4 years, we have seen a kind of rampant anti-intellectualism in this country, right? Where universities and centers for learning are kind of cast, looked at with a suspicious eye by people. There are people who are proud that they don't read, et cetera, et cetera. And actually, I think that this is why Donald Trump became so kind of popular with just a huge swath of people, because there are a lot of people out there who are not terribly well educated, who don't have big vocabularies, and who are not college educated, have no interest in being college educated, et cetera, and who watch fucking Duck Dynasty and was that Tiger King? Although I guess everybody except for me and Kelly has watched Tiger King. So maybe that's not applicable, but anyhow, yeah, there's this whole kind of section of the population of the United States that seems to be, to wear as a kind of badge of pride or honor that they've never been to university, and that they don't really read, et cetera, and they're going to be who they are, and damn everybody else, and here comes Trump, who doesn't have a large vocabulary, who has a difficult time even reading his teleprompters, and so who's quite possibly just functionally literate, and who's kind of bellicose, and they found somebody who represented them, and so this kind of movement of anti-intellectualism in the United States has just gotten worse and worse and worse over the last 4 years, and we seem to be regressing, like we seem to be uncivilizing, if that makes any sense. And the film seems to be a commentary on that, right? What the civilizing of a people entails, right? I almost said entrails because there are a lot of entrails in the film. But what it entails, and I mean, how possible is it, right? And also, I mean, in thinking about the difficulty of kind of constructing an edifice of civilization. One, especially, I mean, when one looks at the U.S. right now, one has to wonder how easily it could be unpicked, right? And, so I think the film's brilliant. It's not easy to get through by any stretch of the imagination. Like I said, it is beautifully shot, but at the same time, you just feel nauseated almost watching it, right? So Robbie Collin, in his review of it, at one point said that it makes Game of Thrones look like Love Actually. So if that gives you some idea, if you have a difficult time kind of stomaching Game of Thrones, you might want to avoid Hard to Be a God. But yeah, it was astounding, and I really hope that the Criterion Collection releases it at some point, because it sounds like, in addition to just being just a tremendous cinematic accomplishment and being really relevant for the world that we're living in right now, it sounds like it had a really complicated, bizarre production history, right? So again, most films are shot over a period of 3 months. This was shot over a period of 6 years. It was edited over a period of 7 years, like right up to the director's death, actually. His wife and his son had to finish the film. But, and I don't know if this is true or not, but I don't remember if it was Robbie Collin who said it, or if I read it in Tim Brayton's review online. But I either heard or read today that when Alexei German shot the film, he shot it silently, right? So there was no dialogue captured during the takes. There were no sound effects, like the sound of... So everything that we hear in the film, the rain, the sounds of animals, the sounds of, weaponry, all the dialogue, the squishing and squelching of the mud, etc., all of that. And I don't know why a director would do this. It seems like it would be exceptionally difficult. But all of that was added after the fact. And so he spent 6 or 7 years creating the soundscape for the movie, which is pretty crazy. It's pretty wild. So anyhow, that's really all I wanted to say about Hard to Be a God. If you, by some strange chance, have seen it, I'd be curious to know your thoughts as well. This very much so seems like a movie that would benefit from being discussed with people. I really should have lined up one or two of my friends to watch it with me today, so that we could talk about it. But I didn't know, right? I didn't know it was going to be one of these movies that was I don't know, like a Rorschach test or something, right? Like one of those ink blots. Like, what do you see in it? But it is very much one of those films, and it's it bears some visual resemblance to Tarkovsky's Andrei Rublev, but otherwise, man, I can't think of anything else I've ever seen quite like this. So, so that's Hard to Be a God. Anyhow, everybody, that's pretty much all I've got to say for this week. Check out Zena's channel. Check out Kelly's video. I will link to that Guardian article as well about writers' favorite romantic scenes in literature. Be sure to tell me what yours are. And I will see you guys again very soon. Adios.